which The Economist have given us a nice graph to show us just how many executive orders in what space of time he has been signing. And as you can see, if you go back to, say, George W. Bush, he waited about a week before signing, 2 weeks, in fact, before signing any executive orders. Obama began with a couple, and then Trump begins in basically the same vein before ramping it up. And Joe Biden, though, has just blown them all out of the water by doing 25 in his first 2 days, to give you a kind of just a framing of how unprecedented what Biden is doing here is. This is frankly Biden going, well, full imperialist, essentially. Full, imperial executive, where the rules are going to be made from the top down, and you can go hang. He's not going to be engaging with the normal democratic process, it seems, or at least not by much. But you looked into the executive order history, didn't you?
Yeah, so if you have executive orders for each president per year of office, because of course Trump 4, so on and so forth, well then they're all pretty much around about 50, 60 odds. It's not like none of them are really, Trump, Barack, or George. They're not massive deviations from each other. Trump a little bit more, but he's ending 4 terms, so of course he's ramping a few up. Whereas Joe Biden, this is, 2 days in, 25, pretty unprecedented.
Yeah, he's a third of the way through the year on day 2.
We spoke about this, which is that the reason he's doing this is obviously because every one of those is an undoing of something Donald Trump did.
Yeah.
So it's like we've got to destroy his entire history and everything he ever did. And it sort of demonstrates perfectly how Donald Trump was a kink in the system. He was not Barack Obama or George Bush. I mean, of course, those guys have got the differences and all the rest of it, but Trump is just on a different scale compared to any of these type of people, where it's like, no, I've got completely different interests, completely different types of people I want to promote.
And one thing that I find interesting is that a lot of what Biden's doing just seems to be full-on Trump derangement syndrome, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, so the most absurd being the claim that they need to redo the color scheme for Air Force One.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether cares. I don't know whether Trump maybe Trump had recolored it in some different color. I don't know. But I mean, if he had, don't you have more important things to worry about?
Yeah, it's not like he put his name on the side. Like, he does that on his own planes, so...
I imagine Joe Biden does that on his own planes as well. But anyway, so let's talk about the experts praising Biden's COVID plan, because 10 of these executive orders, almost half of them, were about COVID-19. And so this was MSNBC News. Experts praising Biden's COVID plan, warn that undoing Trump-era mistakes will take time. So basically, Biden's team have said that the Trump administration left the job of getting vaccination shots into Americans' arms up to state and local governments, which has led to, quote, distribution problems. Now, this to me really summarizes the difference, right? And this is why I've been describing Biden in a sort of European and honestly Napoleonic method of government. So it's essentially executive action from the top, and everything is to be centralized at the top of the Grand Pyramid, and everything will be cascaded down. Whereas Trump was a decentralizer. He was fine, and this is the point of the federalization of the United States, is that each state is not merely a kind of a district under the heel of the capital. But they were complaining that, look, this has been, left up to the states. Therefore, they've been using the term "there's been no plan." And Biden has come out and said, right, I've got this ambitious goal of giving 100 million vaccination shots in 100 days. It would be a huge jump from the 17.5 million shots administered since they became available on December the 14th. So it's Trump's decentralized model versus Biden's centralized. But if we go, the first thing to note is that this is actually, saying like, oh, we're going to give 1 million shots a day. That's actually pretty much what Trump left office doing. As you can see, the rolling daily average, this chap's a Washington Post journalist, so he's not like some anti-Biden internet partisan or something. But this is from Bloomberg's COVID-19 vaccine tracker, 912,000 rolling daily average. So when they're sat there going, the rollout has been a dismal failure, well, I mean, it's almost what you're claiming to want to do.
We want to continue the dismal failure, is what you're saying there. But and obviously, it's not a dismal failure.
Exactly. And as you can see, it's just the number of vaccines has been growing over time, presumably as capacity is increased, to production capacity and rollout has increased. But so Biden is promising them virtually nothing, really, than what is already happening, aside from the idea of it being centralized.
And the mandate on masks, I propose.
The mandate on masks is one thing, yeah. But
not that they really work, but
no,
that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah, not that it matters anymore, right? The point is, the point is a glorification of the dear leader, frankly. And I'm really sick. I say I'm really sick of hearing the media spout lies. But really, if I was actually really sick of hearing the media spout lies, I probably wouldn't be doing this job, right? So anyway, let's go to CNN's coverage of this. Yeah, that's why I do this job. Yeah, let's go to CNN's coverage of this. Right, Biden inheriting non-existent coronavirus distribution plan and must start from scratch. Sources say. So these sources are
her daughter, like.
I don't know, unnamed sources in the White House or involved in this.
Because the factual data doesn't show that.
Yeah, well, that's the point, isn't it, right? Like, if there's no distribution plan, how are they already fulfilling Biden's plan of 1 million a day? How have they done it? If there's no, there is nothing for us to rework. We are going to have to build everything from scratch. Another source described the moment it became clear that the Biden administration would have to essentially start from square one because there is simply no plan as is. Wow, just further affirmation of complete incompetence. Well, okay, thank you, unnamed sources who seem to be flying in the face of, I don't know, reality as it's being reported in the data. And do we trust these unnamed sources or do we trust Fauci? I mean, I don't think there are actually that many people who like Fauci, but that doesn't mean that Fauci is just a liar on everything that he says. And he came out and said, well, we're not starting from scratch because there is activity in the distribution. But what he wants to do is ramp it up. Okay, fine, you want to ramp it up. But the point is, he literally... Again, this woman is, I don't know, Wall Street Journal or Washington Post columnist as well. CNN's White House correspondent. Sorry, that was why this particular reporting was used. I used it because the previous one was obviously CNN saying, "Oh, we're starting from scratch," and then CNN White House correspondents actually Fauci's not starting from scratch. So shut up. But anyway, Biden's got this giant plan. He's been promising this massive plan all the way through the campaign. It was always,
but the
Trump
is
doesn't have
to
a plan.
Do nothing.
Well, that's literally it. Yeah, Trump doesn't have a plan. I have a plan. What's your plan, Joe? And the plan is actually, sorry, there's nothing that we can do. We're doing everything we can, and it's like, okay. So, and quote, there's nothing we can do to change the trajectory of the pandemic in the next several months. So, do nothing. Is that the plan?
Yeah.
That's it.
Because what he's saying, though, is there's nothing the central government can do.
Yeah.
Whereas the state governments are doing what they can do. That's why you have that rollout.
So what was all this about? This was all about lies. This was all about setting a narrative. This is all about putting in the readers' minds the idea that Trump had, I don't know, irresponsibly shirked his duty to try and help, which he hadn't, and that Biden was some sort of, divine North Korean style savior who's going to come in and descend from the heavens and start doling out COVID vaccines, which he won't. It's a big theater. It's a big fiction, and I kind of hate it. But of course, Biden has been incompetent in many ways. I mean, the 25,000 troops that were deployed to Washington, D.C. as part of their security precaution, the insane paranoia that there was going to be some giant uprising to depose the government or something, didn't exactly help. Between 150 and 200 members of the National Guard tested positive for the coronavirus since being called to protect Joe Biden's inauguration. And just so you know, apparently 5,000 of these troops are going to remain in the Capitol until March.
7,000.
Oh, well, it says 5,000 reported by the Post Millennial, but I've seen 7,000 said elsewhere. But yeah, again, now we have an occupational force in the Capitol that it just happens to be spreading COVID as well. I mean, if they care about COVID, I don't know.
Well, no, it's just large gatherings cause it.
Of course it is.
Well, large gatherings of military personnel also cause it. But it's the point here that this was also just completely pointless. The only violence on Inauguration Day
came from the left,
to current knowledge, was Antifa violence.
Yes.
Well, what's that got to do with the far right attacking Joe Biden or anything like this?
Not much, but again,
there wasn't any.
Doesn't seem to be the issue. He seems to just want to have 5,000 troops on hand just in case, because the American public are out there. You want to be careful. Good grief! Now go make them sleep in the cellar.
I read some comparisons. People trying to compare this to the Grenadier Guard that armed the Queen.
Yeah,
and that's not what these guys are. Like, the Secret Service exists to protect the president.
Yes.
They have guards in all of the buildings. You've got the local police protecting these
Biden's
buildings.
constantly shadowed by, the Secret Service.
Yeah, the extra 7,000. I mean, you don't have 7,000 Grenadier Guards on call every day.
7,000 is a huge number as well.
It's a lot of guys.
Yeah,
So-
just as a standing force in the capital.
No, it is
In
something
peacetime.
unneeded.
Yeah.
And is there, for what reason, we don't know.
I mean, unless you're actively at war, what the hell is the point of this? But again,
I suppose you are.
Exactly. Maybe you are actively at war. Incidentally, the World Health Organization, as the post-millennial report, they've been doing some great work recently. The World Health Organization issued a notice 1 hour after Biden was sworn in to let us know that, oh, by the way, those tests, actually they give a lot of false positives. You just might want to be aware of that. And it's like, oh, really? That's really interesting, isn't it? Like, what weird timing. So anyway, so going back to Biden's executive orders. So his executive orders on COVID are going to do very little that isn't already being done. And his executive orders, let's talk about jobs. We heard from the Washington Post on the 8th, I believe this was released, this article, that Trump will have the worst jobs record in U.S. modern history. It's not just the pandemic, apparently. According to... Yeah, exactly. No. It gets better, right? It gets better. By which I mean it gets worse. Friday's awful jobs report from the Labor Department showed there were 3 million fewer jobs in the United States than there were on Inauguration Day in 2017, when Trump stood in front of the Capitol and vowed to reverse the American carnage. No other modern president has left the US with a smaller workforce than when they took office. Since the government started keeping track in 1939, no other president has ever seen significant job losses during a single presidential term, though job growth during George W. Bush's four terms was essentially flat. The catastrophic job losses during Trump's presidency were not sparked by his labour market policies, at least at first. They were caused by the arrival of the deadly novel coronavirus and the slumping consumer demand and business closures that followed. Well,
Wait, so they just admitted it?
They just admit it in the article.
But also, we've got the graph
in the
on screen.
headline, they claim it's not because of coronavirus, and in the article, it's not his labour market policies.
But also just their thumbnail here. Like, we have this on screen for the audience. What do you think caused the drop there? Do you think that's his policies over time? Or do you think that's maybe a national lockdown because of coronavirus?
Yeah. But the thing is, the lockdowns happened in Democrat areas against Trump's wishes. So basically, you have in like California or New York, the Democrat governors who are like never Trumpers, who hate Trump, who have been saying, we refuse any help we can get from you. You are an evil man, blah, blah, blah. They are locking down their own local economies and then saying this is Trump's fault.
It's literally the stick meme, like shoving in the bike.
Literally the stick meme. Oh, how could Trump do this to us? It's unreal. And it's so transparent. It's just on the face of it. And so it's all right.
I'm looking at that graph, for the early part where his growth is taking place. I mean, who's better there? Johnson? I think Carter might be the only two.
Pretty much. I mean, Nixon goes, supersedes him there, but like Trump.
But I mean, for the first half there.
Yeah. Trump's on a steady upward trajectory of.
But a pretty good one as well.
Yeah, perfectly fine. And it's what? Oh God, we're going to have to lock everything down to stop Trump at this rate. It's like, okay, well, I mean, the only people who can stop you are the people who vote for you, and apparently they're blaming Trump for you locking them down. But okay, right? So Trump didn't destroy jobs, and the Washington Post just admit that he didn't do it, and it was the coronavirus, which means it was the Democratic governors. So moving on, let's get to this is the context we're going into. And then we get to Joe Biden's work. Now, this was a tweet from a chap who claims to be a farmer from Tennessee. I don't know whether he's a farmer from Tennessee, but I read through all the replies to see if there's anyone, contradicting anything he'd said, and I couldn't find anything. And he's claiming that because of Joe Biden's executive orders, farmers like himself have just lost $100,000 on a 200 bushel per acre average corn crop. It's like, wow. That's not very useful, is it? Why the hell would he do that? But Biden's executive orders, the flurry of them, it's amazing how much destruction can be done with the stroke of a pen. So if we go to the next one, you see Frank Maricharola, the Senior Vice President of Policy, Economics and Regulatory Affairs at the American Petroleum Institute. So exactly, petrol industry paid expert, just to be aware. But he thinks that this could end up costing up to 1 million American jobs through the closure of the Keystone XL pipeline, which directly will cost 11,000 jobs, in itself indirectly 60,000 jobs, and then the excess being the consequent industries that would be affected by this. On the federal scale, because
you can see just there's actually a bit of a stupid argument here. So Biden's administration are trying to argue it's only 11,000 jobs directly, and then they're saying the indirect jobs don't count.
Yes,
so you can see there's 60,000 indirect jobs also going.
Because what's happened is there's been a full-scale ban on development on federal lands for oil and gas, which is okay, but I mean Trump spent a lot of time making the U.S. energy independent, and now you're destroying the U.S. energy economy. I mean, New Mexico there were various complaints from like governors in New Mexico complaining that New Mexico voted for Biden and we're heavily dependent on the oil industry. Why are you doing this to us? It's like, well, you get what you deserve, don't you? You know, maybe you should have got your dead voters to vote Trump. But anyway, so I shouldn't laugh, but it's like, sorry, why did you think? And man, there are loads. Did I put the There are loads of people on Twitter. I'll get to that in a second. There are loads of people on Twitter complaining. Hang on a second, I didn't vote for this when I voted for Joe Biden. It's like, yeah, you did. But anyway, I went and looked up some fact checks for this, and the fact checks came back as half true, as in that it's true that 11,000 jobs are going to go, but those jobs were only temporary, and it's like. I mean, every building job is temporary by that standard. Like, no one ever works in construction if...
Forever.
Exactly. Okay, the building is finished. Great. Well, yeah, your job's over. You're no longer employed in construction. It's like...
So unless you're constructing it for...
yeah, exactly.
Till the end of
pyramid,
time.
You know? It's going to be a 20-year project. Yeah, okay, then it's not a real job. Right, okay.
It's only 20 years. It's only temporary.
Yeah, and so with destroying these jobs, what's interesting, I mean, it's going to cost billions of dollars in wages for regular people, right? But as Jack Posobiec reports on Twitter, apparently union leaders have been going mad at Joe Biden, because obviously a bunch of the unions all endorse Biden, say, oh yeah, Biden's going to be fine, he's not going to ban fracking, which he claimed, he's not going to damage these industries, because obviously these are the jobs that the unions themselves depend upon to even exist as unions. And so Biden has really solved the union problem by just getting rid of their jobs. But apparently wall, pipelines, gas, coal, etc., all of these work sites are closing on a daily basis thanks to his executive orders. They're being told to call back in a few weeks, and some calls aren't even being answered, says a White House official. Well, that's good news.
I just have to say you're a moron.
Yeah.
Then. You saw what was happening in the 8 years before. You guys were getting screwed. You know, all of your jobs were being shipped overseas.
Yep.
And a lot of guys went over to Trump's campaign because of that reason.
Yep.
And then you had the boom, and then you flipped back to Biden. Why?
Don't know. What,
you hate your own members? Like,
yeah.
What?
What was in it for you? Unemployment, I guess, is what's in it for you. Now, Joe Biden claims that these jobs are going to be replaced with green energy jobs. So he's he promised during the presidential campaign to ban hydraulic fracking on federal lands. I've seen contradicting reports there.
Yeah, because it came from him. He said that he was going to do it and also not going to do
Yeah,
it.
when he was like in Pennsylvania, he was like, "I won't ban fracking." It's like, okay. Well, here we are. I mean, Trump, for all his flaws, seems to have tried to do what he said he was going to do. But he said he would create more jobs with his $2 trillion climate and energy plan, which seeks to supplant fossil fuels with solar and wind power and electricity generation by 2035 and achieve net zero by 2050. Now, I know that you're hungry today, right? And that tomorrow your rent's due, and that you're thinking, God, how am I going to pay for my kids' schools or whatever it is? But by 2035, it will be clean. So don't worry about it. You'll be fine by then. I don't understand why anyone would think this is a good idea. I hate this sort of massive gaps in concern where it's like, yeah, but anyway, this is not good generally. And this, again, I think is not just because of ideological drive. I think it is that there are a lot of people around Biden who've put all of these ideas into him and his manifesto, because I don't really think he came up with these by himself. And this has created a kind of whirlwind of TDS that surrounds Joe Biden and informs everything he does. Like firing the butler who was supposed to open the door to the White House. To the White House. So after the inauguration, Biden and his wife Jill are due to go in, as you can see on the screen if you're watching, and he can't get in because no one's there to open the door. Because the guy who was supposed to open the door was a Trump appointee, and Biden literally said, well, we want to get rid of anyone who is connected to Trump. So yeah, that's right. The butler who opens the door is going to be a secret Trump insider. I was going to what?
Undermine the whole administration.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess day one was successful. You can't even get in the White House, can you? So it's like, okay.
Like, what was the butler going to do?
I don't know. I mean, light candles, I guess, open doors. See, and now the Biden administration is scuttled. But anyway, again, this is just an example of TDS, right? Who cares about this Butler guy, right? But then you get this report from the Post Millennial where Biden has rescinded an executive order that prevented China from buying up the US power grid. Now, this wasn't rescinded for the reason that Trump had done it explicitly. It was rescinded because it was part of Biden's environmental agenda. So he obviously has some sort of radical plan. He wants to change all of this. And so he needs to get rid of Trump's protections, opening it up for China to be able to buy all these things in. And so it's not that Biden is necessarily trying to give China access. Let's assume that 2 stacks haven't arrived yet, right? And that Biden is just trying to do the best he can in the way he thinks. Either way, this is still Trump derangement syndrome on full display. And this is what like coming in like a bull in a china shop. I'm going to undo everything Trump's done. It's like, okay, but I mean, some of the things that Trump did were actually really decent, and maybe you should think about them. But speaking of Trump, as we have to constantly because he lives in everyone's mind, what's Trump been doing? And more importantly, what have the media been doing in regards to Trump? Well, if we can see the picture, they've been creeping on him like a bunch of weirdos. I mean, where is this photo taken from, right? This is a photo, for anyone who's just listening, of Trump in a golf cart on a golf course somewhere in Florida, presumably, relaxing now that he is no longer the president and taking some much needed rest and relaxation, getting some exercise, acting like a private citizen. And the weird press are in the bushes. And I don't know, like like a shack in the bushes or something, taking photos, going, there he goes. It's like, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? Like, they just can't stop thinking about the man. It's like, are we going to get like pictures of Trump's bathroom or something through now? Good God.
They're going to go searching through his trash.
Yes, exactly. I don't doubt that they are already. It's like, okay, fine. But yeah, weirdly though, one thing Biden didn't do is choose to move the US embassy in Jerusalem, which the left are not very happy with. Imperialist Biden administration will keep embassy in Jerusalem. Well, I mean, maybe it's somehow tied to all that Middle East peace that Trump managed to bring about. Who knows? But they're not happy with it. Biden's an imperialist. I can't believe we voted for him and promoted him. Unbelievable, say the left. Biden's approval rating is an interesting thing, though. As he comes into office, he's actually less popular than Trump was, according to a Rasmussen poll. I believe Rasmussen more than I believe the other pollsters, to be honest. And it seems to be because Rasmussen actually do telephone calls. But anyway, so when Trump took office, his approval rating in the same poll was 56%. Biden's is 48%. When Obama entered office, it was 67%. When Trump entered office, his disapproval rating was 44% and Biden's is 45%. When Trump entered office, 38% strongly approved, whereas when Biden enters, only 36% strongly approve. So by at least that poll, it seems that Biden is actually not the people's president as the apparent...
So he's underperforming the very divisive Donald Trump going into it.
But Biden has underperformed in every metric, apart from when it comes to the vote. The popular vote, incidentally, not like the votes spread out across the United States, just in the popular vote, in certain key battleground areas. Biden massively overperforms, but in every other aspect, Biden has underperformed, including like in the primary and just all other things. And yeah, so there are a lot of Biden voters and supporters and die-hard Biden supporters who seem to be not very happy. Now, there's There's a Twitter account called Biden Voters Posting Their L's Online, which has been aggregating these. This is one of them, and I love this so much. Right, this is massive regret from a chap called Jameson with a little LGBT flag in his profile. He says, "How do we go from a $15 federal minimum wage to a $15 minimum wage for federal workers? This is feeling very 600 plus 1400 equals 2000 all over again." Now, I just want to stress, like, everything he said there is correct, right? Biden doesn't have the power to just arbitrarily say that all businesses have to pay their workers $15 an hour minimum wage, but he can make sure that the minimum wage for federal workers is $15 an hour. He also is right when he says 600 plus 1400 is 2000. I mean, that is a factually true statement. So when he's like, this is feeling 600 plus 1400 equals 2000 all over again, reality is currently happening and has been happening the whole time. And he's upset about it.
One piece of information that's being left out there is actually, I believe the $15 minimum wage for federal workers is not immediate. It has to be like 10 years or something like that before it comes up to that place. So it'll be increased over that time period to 15.
I just assumed that they were going to set it through fiat, obviously.
So, and Sean Head, I've got to mention, because she was a big proponent of this.
Yeah.
Yep, not happening. Sorry.
You get what you vote for.